All right, folks, for those of you listening live on K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network, don't worry, you have found the right show. I am Rick Robinson. You are going to be listening to America Off the Rails. We are going to do a special taping for WNJC 1360 right now, though, so as soon as the show starts, you're going to hear primarily the stuff dealing with WNJC. For those of you that do listen through the streams, I just didn't want to freak you out and make you think you tuned into the wrong station. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start the show right now. I will have, when everything picks up as it normally does, I will have Mr. Patrick Fenari with me for the evening, and we'll be discussing recent election events in both New Hampshire and Iowa. But bear with me, folks. We'll be right back. Just didn't want you to think you'd found the wrong show or wrong station.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Well, hello, WNJC. This is Rick Robinson. I'm the host of America Off the Rails, and it is Thursday, February the 11th, 2016. We are coming to you from WNJC Studios in Philadelphia. I am the host of America Off the Rails, as I said a moment ago. I do have with me for the entirety of the show today Mr. Patrick Fernari. I know I've had him on the show before. We're going to have him on again. We're going to talk Iowa, New Hampshire, an article that he's written, and probably get into a bit of a discussion about Trump, but we'll get to that later. Without further ado, Mr. Patrick, how are you, sir? Patrick? I don't think Patrick can hear me. Hang on just a minute, folks. I don't know where Patrick went. I can hear Patrick. Patrick, are you still there, or did I lose you, sir?
You still here?
Yeah, we're here. Can you not hear me?
No, I couldn't hear you at all.
All right, not sure what happened there because I could hear you on my side. Anyway, without further ado, folks, now that we've got the technical difficulties out of the way, Mr. Patrick Fernari, sir, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you doing?
Well, if I could get the gremlins out of my system, I'd be doing awesome.
Good.
All right. So before we went live tonight, you sent me an article. I have to admit, I did read it. As usual, I do enjoy what you write about and what you have to say. Why don't we go ahead and open the show by you talking a bit about that article, if you don't mind?
Well, basically, I wrote the article the morning after Iowa. The caucus was, I think, a very interesting process, but at the same time, I thought that the media spin on it was a little bit strange, to say the least. Obviously, there's a lot of people in the media that were hoping for an upset as far as Mr. Trump win, because there was a lot of projection that he was going to win Iowa, according to what the polls were saying. I don't know if he was that confident in that, and I kind of thought that Ted Cruz probably would take Iowa. So the media attention turned to Rubio's finish, and also kind of negated Mr. Trump's kind of role that he had been on. So I just thought it was all a bit strange. And I knew that going into New Hampshire that it was going to be a different field for Senator Cruz, who I think would make a good president. I think that by the turnout and everything that we've seen, that we might be assured at least a Republican president out of this process. I don't think it's a lock for anybody right now, especially as the field narrows.
All right, so interesting take there. Now, I have, just in case we have folks that are listening to you for the first time, you have made some points about Trump as you and I have talked through the evolution of the shows that we've done together. And you actually have a take on it that I think is interesting. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and rewind for just a minute and go back to something that you mentioned on one of the last few times you were on with me, where you were referring to Trump and his role as possibly what would be considered a transitional candidate as opposed to a transformational one, if you don't mind.
Well, I did mention that in this column also, and I do believe that. I think that in my book, Common Sense, I talk about the swing of the pendulum. And by that, I mean political views, sentiments at any given time, either by the press, the public, or the electorate in general. Okay, and we have swung very far to the left with the election of Barack Obama. Now, where we are at exactly in the arc of the swing back towards the right, I'm not sure. I think that someone like Ted Cruz, ideologically, I agree with and align with more. Okay, everything from the Christian conservative part to his knowledge of the Constitution. So I think a lot of people have projected an image upon him where they're saying, okay, I want that. I don't think the electorate is quite there yet. And here's the reason, Rick. If you take the borders, military, and the economy, and those are really the same things if you add them up, what it all equals to is security. And without security, people become very distracted. If you're either having to physically fight for your security or you're constantly scrambling for your economic security, you can't get a whole lot done. So Donald Trump would be a transitional president in the sense that he would take over in a business sense and get some of the basic things figured out, especially those three basic things. You can take it further than that and start talking about healthcare, the border issue, all that kind of stuff. That's all fine. But without the borders, the military, and the economy functioning in a good way, I think we're going to have a hard time moving to a candidate like Senator Cruz, for example. I always hoped, and I still do, that somehow they patch things up, and that if Donald Trump did actually become the nominee of the party, I had always hoped that he would pick Cruz as the vice president to shore up the constitutional nature of his administration, and I think that they could go a long way in educating each other. But now there's been kind of a big divide there. I don't know if that's going to happen. Quite frankly, I watched Senator Cruz on Fox News tonight on a Megyn Kelly show, and if I was to say that he was disingenuous in his description of where Trump stood on the positions would not be giving it to you straight. It was really incredible the way that he framed it. With all that said, Trump is on a roll, and I think we do need a CEO type maybe to kind of grab the reins of this thing and take control of things. As Calvin Coolidge famously said, and I'm paraphrasing him, the business of America is business. And I think that we might have to go through that phase before we can pursue our more ideological kind of aspirations that I want for the country and for the presidency also.
All right, but let's just, taking one thing in particular that stood out to me that he has said, and knowing that there is going to be a really good shot at whoever becomes the president of the United States getting a chance to appoint at least one, possibly more, Supreme Court justices during this next term. Does it not concern you that Trump has made comments repeatedly about how he had thought that his sister, who happens to be very liberal, would make a really good Supreme Court judge? And I only mention that because Hillary's also said the same thing about possibly trying to get our current president as Supreme Court justice if she becomes president, who also happens to be a disbarred attorney. So if you look at them, when you really look at them, I really don't see that much of a difference between the two, and I think that's where I keep coming up short.
Well, I hear this particular point in this argument quite often, Rick. And if you look at it, it's all kind of a gamble and a crapshoot at that point anyhow. And here's what I mean. I don't think Trump would appoint his sister. I think Trump likes his sister, and he's going to say those things about his sister, not taking into consideration the full scope of her ideology or record. And I don't think he's going to appoint her to the Supreme Court. I could be wrong. Weird things have happened. But I think he will try to vet and appoint conservative judges because there's going to be a harsh spotlight on it, and it's really going to be the responsibility of a Republican president to do that. And also, Ted Cruz, for better or worse, appointed what everybody, or helped to appoint and push and promote what everybody thought would be a great conservative Supreme Court judge in the form of Judge Roberts, who twice had the chance to really just kick the heck out of Obamacare, didn't do it, and basically made the argument for the Obama administration to the court, changing its status from tax to not tax and everything, doing all those kind of arguments, and twice delivered us Obamacare. And that was a judge appointed by George Bush, who was heavily lobbied and pushed by Senator Ted Cruz. So if you want to, like I said, if you want to go into these other issues that go a little bit past the economy, borders, and the military, okay, at this point, I think we're in a bit of an emergency. And everybody always says, well, gee, everybody's acting angry and we're going to make the wrong decisions and stuff. I don't agree with that. I think that it's a natural thing when a human instinct when things are going badly for people to react like they do. And I think you would agree with me that no matter what candidate any particular voter is for, that if you're not angry about the current state of the United States of America and the Obama regime, you're not paying attention.
Well, no, and I do completely understand that. Now, I do have a question for you real quick. It's and it actually kind of ties together because you had mentioned that we had a Supreme Court justice who had the chance to put the nail in Obamacare's coffin and didn't do it. One of the things I think that disturbs me the most is something that I found that I didn't even realize that Trump had said. And I don't know if you've heard this yet. I'm going to play it, and then I'm hoping the Gremlins will allow you to hear it. So it'll run for about a minute or so. When it stops playing, okay, I'll double check with you and make sure that you could actually hear it. And if not, I'll kind of paraphrase it because I know the listeners can hear it, but for some reason you were having an issue earlier, so I'm hoping we fix that.
What's your plan for Obamacare?
Obamacare is going to be repealed and replaced. Obamacare is a disaster. If you look at what's going on with premiums, where they're up 45, 50, 55%.
So how do you fix it?
There's many different ways, by the way. Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford private. But
universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now.
The uninsured person?
Right.
Is going to be taken care of.
They're going to be taken care of.
How?
I would make a deal with existing hospitals to take care of people. And you know what? This is probably...
Make a deal. Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side. But for the most part, it's going to be a private plan, and people are going to be able to go out and negotiate great plans with lots of different competition, with lots of competitors, with great companies, and they can have their doctors, they can have their plans, they can have everything.
All right. So were you able to hear that or no?
Yeah, I could hear it.
Okay, so I guess we did fix the Gremlins there for a second. I think I had a setting wrong on your end. Okay, so I have to admit, I was surprised when I found that. For anybody who's wondering where that came from, that was actually a CBS 60 Minutes interview that was done back in September. And it's one of the things that, and honestly, anytime I start hearing him talk about how he's going to repeal and replace Obamacare, this is the clip that continually runs through my head. I'm not saying I'm anywhere near as good as Ted Cruz with it, but when I hear something, normally I don't forget it, and it tends to crop its head up at the worst time. So one of the things that I keep struggling with are things that I've heard him say much like this, where he's going to basically, whether anybody wants to admit that that's what he's saying or not, what he's saying sounds an awful lot like universal health care.
Well, the recent article I wrote, my last one, we're not in Iowa anymore, at MagicCityNews.com, on BugleCall.org. I encourage everybody to read it in its totality. What I would say about Mr. Trump's statement there is that we have a lot of politics going on right now. And Obamacare was a big deal, and there was a big part of the electorate that wanted it. And healthcare has been an issue for a long time. In my book, Commoner Sense, I devote a very strong, fairly long chapter to a different version of healthcare. And with that version of healthcare that is grounded in capitalism and being able to have exchanges across borders and everything, there is some government support in there with the idea of weaning states off of federal support and having different healthcare systems in their states. So I think that since we do now, through Medicare, basically take care of everybody, that expense is out there, and there are ways to lower costs and deliver health care. I doubt that there's many Americans that would say, I just don't want health care for that person. If Trump is calling it universal or I'm going to take care of everybody, I realize that politically that may be a hurdle, but if it's done away from the existing system, the way that the drug companies and the health companies are structured now, and put into more of a competitive thing in the world of capitalism, and is solved with capitalism, like many other things that have been able to compete, the price eventually comes down, and then it becomes ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And healthcare should be, as far as I'm concerned, it should be something that's easy to access. Now, does that mean that everybody is completely covered by the government, or does it mean that it's very low cost and they have access to it? Well, we'll find out. But there's a lot of people. Trump's a politician. He's running to get elected. There's a lot of people that have gotten this Obamacare that might not vote for him if he just says completely it's going to be repealed and we're going back the other way. So from a political standpoint, I understand what he's saying. From a financial standpoint, I understand what he's saying. And I do believe that many, many more people can be covered by using capitalism to do it rather than the approach Obamacare took. Will it cover everybody? No. Will Trump's plan end up covering everybody? I really doubt it. But we can probably do a little bit better. And in the long run, if we do it right through competition, I think it would cost the country less and benefit people more. I point out in Commoner Sense that in 50 or 60 years, we're not going to be having these arguments anyhow, and no one is going to understand why we are arguing about it, whether it's about oil or global warming or healthcare or anything else, because the world in the United States will have done what we have done for a very long time, Rick. Technology will take over. Science will solve the problem. Healthcare will become cheap. It will be for everybody. So right now, I don't know if I look at it as the most important political point or not, no matter how Trump is expressing it.
Okay, well, I mean, just bear with me for a second because I'm going to back things up a little bit. First of all, you had mentioned Trump as a politician. I submit that he's trying to run as the anti-politician, but I think he's starting to fall short on that, and that's just my personal opinion. Now, as far as whether or not he's going to be taking the right tact, all I'm going to say about that is for the last 7, now going on 8 years, we have been looking at the other side of the aisle and telling them that they should have taken Obama at face value and listened to what he was saying, because he told everybody exactly what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. But nobody listened to him because everybody just said, well, he can't honestly mean the things that he's saying right now. No, he meant everything that he said, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. But now that the shoe is on the other foot, and our side has somebody that has got gravitas and the cult of personality that Obama had when he first came on the scene, we have an entire group of our party that is now doing the same thing that we've been making fun of the Democrats for doing for the last 8 years. And I think that's the thing that concerns me, is we're not taking this guy at face value. He tells us exactly what he's going to do when he actually says what he's going to do, and everybody says, well, that's not what he meant. So I have a problem with that, only because that's the same thing that the other side did, and we see where that got us.
Well, the first thing I think everybody needs to realize is that we hear a lot of this, never been seen before, all this kind of thing, about Trump. The fact of the matter is, he is much more like American politics used to be. And I realize that the words populism and nationalism are 4-letter words to whether it's conservative pundits that don't know what to do with this guy, the establishment politicians in both parties that don't know what to do with this guy. The fact of the matter is, he's much more reflective of how American politics was before the two parties for the last 60 years have dominated the conversation in the narrative. This is where political correctness came from. This is where many of the policies that we have came from. And campaigns with politicians in the past used to be more grounded in Americanism and people saying what they were going to do. I understood and believed Obama, and that is not why, and that is the reason I didn't vote for him, and I did not want him to become president, and he's been a disaster. So for better or for worse, at least this current election season has taken him off the front page to some degree. We don't have to hear him and see him as much, but God knows what he's doing behind the scenes. But back to Trump. So he's that kind of candidate. I think it's more about Americanism. And you're saying, well, our side is saying the same thing. The frustration with Obama is there. And like I say, it is a natural human reaction to want that pendulum to swing back. And he's offering something completely different. Obviously, with Bernie Sanders, if you watched his little victory speech there in New Hampshire, that was an oral recital of his communist manifesto, what he understands, what he wants to do to America. So I definitely don't want him in there. And like, for example, John Kasich, I'm not in love with him. If he gets the nomination, I'm voting for him. I will back him 100%. I am not one of these people that will only vote for Trump, not vote for the Republican, or if Trump gets, not vote, or vote for Hillary, or all this other crazy stuff I've heard. We have got to get a Republican president in there, hopefully with Republican House of Representatives and Senate, so that Congress and everything all lines up Republican. Now, do we need to fix things? Yes. Will he do what he's going to say that he's doing? What he's exhibiting, Rick, is political will. A lot of it is rhetoric. Can he get it all done? I don't know, but you know what? No presidents do, because they give these long, drawn-out, detailed plans, 15-point plans of every little thing they're going to do, because the press demands details. They get into the presidency and they find that, oops, I got a war over here. Oops, I have a disaster over here. I have a terror attack here. Domestic issues get changed. International attitudes get changed. Everything gets changed once they sit down behind the desk. What the American people that are behind Trump right now are trusting is that he has political will and the interests of the American people at heart. Will these things change when he becomes president? Yes. The press will be saying, well, gee, Donald, you said you were going to do that, and you didn't do it. And he'll say why, just like every president does. So in one way, he's very much a politician. In another way, he's very different, because he's making his intent as far as his political will and willingness to work hard and really pay attention to the job. It's more like he's trying to get the job rather than become president, get the job to fix things. And I think that that's why he has that appeal. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that a comparison to Obama, at least in my mind, it doesn't frighten me that much, because obviously he wants to take a country, a direction that a lot of conservatives and Republicans want to take it. And he is not the most conservative person in the race. I understand that.
All right. Well, actually, at this point, we have come up against the bottom of the hour. We're going to have to take a really quick break. When we come back, though, we will continue this discussion. I've got one other clip I want you to listen to, Patrick, and then we'll discuss that, and then we'll actually shift gears and start talking about the caucuses in New Hampshire for the last half of the show. But at this point, folks, we are going to have to take a really quick break. I am Rick Robinson. You are listening to America Off the Rails on WNJC 1360 AM out of Philadelphia. We will be right back after these commercial messages. All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the
Folks, you are listening to America Off the Rails, now a proud member of the Conservative Commando Radio Network, right here on WNJC 1360 AM, the powerhouse of Philadelphia. Now, I have a question for you. Do you ever find yourself maybe not near a radio, Maybe you're traveling and you don't have access to the internet. Did you know that the Conservatives Commando Radio Network can now be heard on a telephone network by calling 832-999-1199 anytime, day or night? That's right. You can hear every show as it's broadcast live, even if you're not near the radio or an internet, because everybody nowadays has a phone in their hand. But here's the good news, though. As soon as we go off the air at night on the Conservative Commando Radio Network right here on WNJC, you can listen to every show that aired for that day as many times as you want just by dialing that number. It'll be a live feature every day at 12 p.m. daily, and it'll be exclusively for the shows that run on that network. But until the next day when it goes live again, they're going to run them over and over and over again. So now you have on-demand access to the Conservative Commando Radio Network right on your phone. How cool is that? Just remember, the Conservative Commando Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method, and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
All right, guys, we're ready for our Four Seasons sunroom, and Daddy's gonna get a rec room with refreshments.
Oh no, we'll be sleeping under the stars.
Mom, what about the one with, the fun?
Nice try, little bro. It's a gym. My gym.
Hey, Grandma's getting her Four Seasons garden room. Weather tight and still like being outdoors.
Maybe a living room. Oh no, wait, a family hub.
Yeah! No matter what the budget, the season, or the climate, Four Seasons Sunrooms let you and your family enjoy the outdoors inside. Call now to receive your free, no-obligation brochure from the premier manufacturer of sunrooms since 1975.
More reasons for Four Seasons now.
To find out more, call toll-free 800-928-7007. That's 800-928-7007. Call 800-928-7007 today.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
You are listening to America Off the Rails on WNJC 1360 AM out of Philadelphia. I am Rick Robinson. Still have with me Mr. Patrick Fernari. We've been discussing so far Trump and transformation versus transition and his stance when it comes to Trump. And I have to admit, mine has evolved a lot. I'm honestly not sure what I'm going to do, folks, if he gets the nomination. And I've told you that. And I'm just one of those guys. I'm not a pundit. I'm not a reporter. I'm a guy that sits behind the microphone and I tell you what I think in the hopes that it's going to make you think. So I'm not trying to tell anybody what it is that they need to do or how they need to do it. And if you're a Trump supporter, as long as you can talk to me without trying to attack me, then I don't have a problem. If you're a Cruz supporter and you can talk to me without coming at me like an idiot, then I don't have a problem. Because at this point, we are still in the primary phase, folks, and I understand that. This is the time when you pick up the banner for the guy that you want to get the nomination, and you go tooth and nail till they either get it or they don't. And I understand how this process is supposed to work. Now, that being said, one of the biggest things and one of the biggest issues that I have with Trump is he says one thing and then usually, often not too long after that, says something else entirely. If you remember, when he first started coming on the scene, he talked about how he was going to be the guy who was completely anti-establishment. Well, I have a clip that I uncovered, and I've used this on a few other shows, and actually this will be the second time it's actually played here on WNJC, but it's the first time that I do believe you've heard it, and I just want to kind of get your take on it. It's actually a back and forth between a couple of reporters and one of Trump's spokesmen, with a clip of Trump thrown in. So this runs for about a minute and a half.
$50 billion that we give Iran, plus their, we release their hostages and they give us nothing. This is shameful. Our country should be better than that. We need to be first, and what we need is a great negotiator so that our country is first.
Do you agree with Donald Trump that you need to be a little bit establishment?
He didn't say we need to be a little bit establishment. What he said is you need to put people in a room to get things done. What we need to do is to fix it. People are so tired of the
let's get to be a little establishment.
If you'd like me to answer the question, I'll be happy to. What he said is you need to put people in the room so that you can get a deal done. Life is about deals. Putting 2 people in a room or 4 people in a room and making sure you can talk through it so that it is best for the country, that's what our country needs. You need a strong leader to get those things done. We need to negotiate better. We need to have better trade deals with our partners. We need to have a better deal when it comes to the economy.
Because he's a strident guy. No, you cannot have that. I told you, he's trying to paint me as part of the establishment. And somebody said, establishment? Well, how come Sarah Palin just backed up establishment? And you know what? There's a point at which let's get to be a little establishment. We got to get things done, folks, okay? Believe me, don't worry. We're going to make such great deals. But at a certain point, you can't be so strident. You can't not get along.
Do you agree with Donald Trump that you need to be a little bit establishment?
He didn't say we need to be a little bit establishment. What he said is you need to put people in a room to get...
Let's get to be a little establishment.
You literally said, let's get to be a little establishment.
If you'd like me to answer the question...
Let's get to be a little establishment.
All right, so, and the only reason I bring this up is, again, the other clip that I played that talked about universal health care and how he wants the government to pay for health care. And I understand that there should be probably some program that the government provides for the folks that are downtrodden. And that was one of the things that we talked about from the beginning when Obama first started talking about doing the mandated coverages and everybody has to get it and all that stuff. Is, look, a lot of our healthcare system is not that broken. It can be fixed by doing simple things like opening up insurance companies to be able to provide insurances across all borders within the country instead of having it be regional. There can be open pricing when you go to the doctor. Who's going to go to a restaurant, order a steak, sit down, eat it, not have any idea what they paid for it until they get the bill? I don't know very many people that do that. But again, on this same token, the same guy that kept telling everybody, hey, I'm not the establishment, I'm not a politician, I'm not here to win friends and influence people, I'm here because the country's broken, now basically just said in his own words, if he winds up getting the nomination and becoming president, he will have no choice but to start blending in with the establishment. And I'm sorry, that concerns me because the establishment in both parties is broken. They're only looking to be able to build up their power bases. And if he's going to find ways to work within those groups of people, we're going to have even bigger problems than we thought. Because the biggest thing that concerns me about Trump is the fact, and I've said this on pretty much every show that I've ever talked about when it comes to Trump, absolute power corrupts absolutely. He has not used the power that he has now very wisely. If you look at some of the decisions that he's made, his actions the use of eminent domain, the other things that he's done that nobody's talking about. I don't want that type of person in the White House, no matter what I think it may do for the country, because in the end, it's going to wind up being at least 1,000,000 times % more negative than it could possibly be a positive. At least that's my opinion. And that's just what I'm doing, is just giving folks my opinion. So,
well, we're taking a chance on any president that we elect. I don't agree with Trump 100% on everything he's ever said, done, or will say or do. And that'll be true with any president that's elected this time. I just think that the show of so far bodes well for the Republicans, and I will vote for the Republican nominee no matter who he is. Now, as far as him saying a little bit of establishment, he was right in the middle of going back and forth with the Republican Party and everybody else, and coming off the thing of pledging to stay with the Republican Party. The fact of the matter is, Rick, whether anybody likes it or not, in a two-party system that we have, any person that gets elected and backed by their party will be at least part of the establishment and will have to work with them to a certain degree. The only way Trump could be absolutely not part of the establishment is run third party, which would get Hillary Clinton or a lunatic like Bernie Sanders elected. So he is in contact, obviously, with the Republican Party and Reince Priebus and everybody else, and there are people out there that are voters that he's trying to get because he is a politician running in a political race that are afraid that he won't work with the establishment at all. So he's saying, well, I will, but I'm going to get good deals for our side, for the Republican side, for the conservative point of view, or at least for the America-centric point of view. And I'm not sure if that's the way to fix the country or not. I do think he would be transitional. It's a stopgap. And the better economy we end up with, the more secure borders that we end up with, and the stronger military that we end up with, will allow America's higher ideological, political aspirations, whether they're grounded in a president that is much more conservative and or Christian, will allow that to happen. I hoped from the beginning that if Trump really was going to win it, that it was going to be Trump-Cruz. And the only reason I put it in that order is because I don't think Trump wants to be vice president and wouldn't be Cruz-Trump. So I thought that might be a great transition, too. It might give us 16 years of a Republican president, with the last 8 years finished up with Ted Cruz, that is a candidate that a lot of Americans would prefer, but putting a religious test on it and 100% agreement, or deciding what percentage of establishment, maybe it'll be 5% establishment, that's better than 100% establishment.
All right, so let's set a date. What I want to do right now, because we've got the Super Tuesday stuff coming up in a few weeks, what I want to do is set up a time after that happens where you and I can kind of revisit this again, kind of see how Trump shakes loose when a lot of the other primaries go off, and then kind of continue the discussion that we're having right now, because for the last part of the show, I do want to do what we promised folks we were going to do, and actually talk a little bit about the caucus and the New Hampshire primary. What were your? Let's go ahead and backtrack to the caucus for a minute. What were your overall thoughts there?
Well, I think that the process was exposed to a wider electorate and had a lot more interest, just as the debates did, largely because Trump was in it and because he's brought forth a set of issues that were arguing very hard. I think we had a very, very different election if he wasn't in it. So I think that part is good for the voting public. But I think the caucus is kind of antiquated, and I think that the way that they do it is not necessarily the best way, just because it's tradition, or they've been doing it since '72 or whatever it is. I don't know if it's the best thing in the world. I heard a lot about Iowa voters and how brilliant they were, and to be frank with you, I think that I think they're average people. I think they're interested in politics, and I don't think they're any more special than any other group of people. All the politicians have to say they love them, including Trump. Oh, you're the best. You're the first. This process is amazing. I don't think it's that amazing. I think I like the New Hampshire process better, where it's a straight primary. But it was an education, and if we keep it that way for tradition or whatever other reasons, fine. Maybe it's a good vetting process for a lot of the candidates. Maybe that's the real purpose that it serves, and I think it's intended to be that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it, because I have to admit, until I really started getting interested in politics, I didn't understand the caucus system. That is got to be one of the weirdest election systems I think I've ever seen, because it's not, I mean, because I'm used to, in my state, it's a primary. So you go, you give them your name, you show them your voter ID, they check your ID to make sure that the names match and that you are who you say you are. I know that's a foreign concept in most states, but they do that here. And then basically you get your ballot, you go through it, you vote, you drop it in a machine, and it counts it. These people were there for hours. I mean, it was like, it reminded me of like the Southern Republican Leadership Conference that I covered this last May. I think a caucus might actually be considered more of a convention, where instead of them doing a straw poll, your vote actually counts at the end.
Well, I think I was educated on it to a greater degree, like many people were, this particular election. And even though, like I say, I understand the tradition of it, maybe it's good to do it that way, I personally wouldn't want it that way. I'm not much of a joiner, okay, to begin with, okay? And if I walked into a place and the whole process was some person trying to bark at me or swear my vote or sway my vote, honestly, Rick, I think they'd be in for a pretty rough time. They'd be in for a pretty rough evening with me. Okay, because number one, I wouldn't want to change my mind, and number two, if they got in my face too much, the police would probably have to get involved. Okay, so the whole caucus thing doesn't have a whole lot of appeal to me.
See, I was about to translate it for the listeners when you started talking about how they were going to have a problem, but you did a pretty good job of it on your own. Because yeah, in my experience, when somebody says if they get in my face too much, there's going to be problems or there's going to be police, it just means that they're probably going to get punched in the face.
Right. You know, and that's not because. By the way, I like Trump and I like what he's doing, but it doesn't mean that if he doesn't get the nomination, like I said, I'm voting for the Republican. But I'm not saying that as an angry white man Trump voter. I'm just saying that as an American, no matter who I supported. I just don't think that that's part of the process I want. I always liked when I was growing up, my dad coming back when I was a kid, coming back after voting, and I would say, "Who'd you vote for?" And he'd say, "None of your business." And he told me that for years. And I liked that it was him going there on his own to vote like in a regular primary. You know, and by the way, Rick, just so why I'm thinking about it, if somebody wants to see a really great health care plan, they should buy my book, Commoner Sense, The Working Person's Guide to America. I outlined one in there that's my little health care plan fantasy, but at least it's solved through capitalism. I meant to mention that before in our earlier segment.
That's all right. You can always backtrack anytime you need to. And having read the book, folks, I do encourage you to pick it up. It is available. I do believe you said it was available through Amazon still, if I remember correctly. And that's right. It is one of those books where it's not going to take you a lifetime to figure out what he's trying to say. And it is written in plain English. So if you're like me and you like to read, but sometimes you don't necessarily want to have to pick apart 50-cent words, it's a great book, because he does tell you exactly what he's thinking, and it's almost like I have to tell you, I've talked to him now a handful of times. I think we've done 6-7 shows together at this point over the last.
Yeah, it's at least that many. Yeah, at least.
And so, I mean, honestly, reading your book is a lot like talking to you. It comes across like you're telling a story, and it's like we're sitting in your living room, kind of like when you and I are on the radio. I almost feel like we're just kicking back, drinking a beer, talking politics. Not always agreeing, but definitely talking politics. All right, so...
Well, Rick, you and I have been able to disagree about a lot of... My book certainly doesn't reflect everything Donald Trump talks about, but you and I have been able to disagree I think from the beginning on a lot of points and keep it civil and come to logical, more common sense solutions than we think might be there. There is common ground there. So I don't appreciate any supporters of Trump giving you trouble, supporters of Cruz, or supporters of Hillary. That shouldn't be going on. People just need to just cool out a little bit and get behind their candidate and make logical arguments rather than just emotional ones.
Okay, so and I thank you for that. And like I said, once the Super Tuesday stuff's out of the way, we've definitely got to set up another show. Have you on?
Yeah, I would love that.
There. Now we're down to about 8 minutes of talk time because I got to play a couple of spots at the very end. So for the last little bit, New Hampshire, anything happened that surprised you? Anything you're concerned about there? And that's open for both parties, by the way.
What surprised me was that. I think I still had a very suspicious about polling data since Romney ran for president, and didn't really like what I was seeing. And I noticed a distortion in the filter, whether it's the way the questions were answered or how the media spun the answers, the way that the media perceived the answers. And with New Hampshire, when I saw the polls and saw the numbers, and I saw how it was projected for Trump and Sanders, I didn't believe it. When the election results started coming in, I didn't believe it. I was still that suspicious of the polling. Now, it turned out to be fairly accurate, and to be fair, if you go back and look at some of the polls surrounding Romney, a select few, they were quite accurate. So that's the thing that surprised me, that they were actually fairly accurate, and I'm very surprised. I cannot stand Hillary Clinton. She is even harder to listen to than Obama, and my head almost explodes when I listen to him. And then I watch Bernie, like I said, his oral Communist manifesto that he delivered as a victory speech after this thing, and I just looked at this and I thought, oh my God, we're in so much trouble. This is just, it's just not funny. I mean, I think people are trying to see some light at the end of the tunnel because we have this election coming up, and it looks fairly good for Republicans, but I have every confidence in the world that Republicans can blow this thing.
Sadly, you are probably more right than you know. A couple of the things that stood out to me for between the differences with New Hampshire and Iowa, of course, was Trump had a very strong showing in New Hampshire. I have to give him credit for that. The ones that surprised me were kind of Bush and Kasich, because they kind of came out of the middle of nowhere to at least kind of fight their way into the middle of the pack over in New Hampshire. Kasich, I guess, didn't really surprise me that much. Bush, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised. I was saddened today when I heard that Carly Fiorina was suspending her campaign. A little angered by some of the reaction I saw once she had made the announcement, and people making comments about how she needed to climb back on her broom and fly home. I don't know. See, I guess that's one of the things that's always kind of struck a nerve with me. When somebody is taking the time to put themselves out there and say, hey, I think I can do this, and this is why I think I can do this, the vitriol that they get, it just amazes me. And some of that even goes for Trump. And I mean, because, I don't know Trump personally. I don't know. I'm sure he's a normal guy, puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us. But what I do know is that he is very bombastic and very outspoken, and I think a lot of times that rubs folks the wrong way. And I don't wish him any ill will at all. I don't necessarily want him to get the White House, but that's a story for another day. Now, as far as on the other side, what surprised me was the fact that Bernie Sanders I knew he was probably going to win New Hampshire. I didn't expect him to slaughter her in New Hampshire, though, because that's basically what he did. I mean, he was up by like 20 some odd percentage points, and that has me worried for our future. Can I just say that right now? Because he had 70 some odd % of the under 40 vote in New Hampshire. What does that say about our future?
Well, it's insane, and I don't like to use this particular word, but his speech to me was frightening. Okay, it was just the idea, Obama laid quite a groundwork by pushing us to the left and fundamentally transforming America. Okay, like you said earlier in the show, he said he was going to do it. You believed him, and I do believe that he has done it. And now we are kind of in a generational cycle where people don't even remember who in the hell the Clintons are. And, if they really knew the nightmare that they were, I think Hillary would be doing even worse. She is absolutely, positively the worst campaigner, speaker, and retail politician of the last half century. Bernie's a better politician. But what he's selling, oh my God. I mean, Rick, we're almost coming down. If you think about it, if a big capitalist guy, businessman like Trump ends up getting a Republican nomination, and if on the other side somehow Bernie gets it, which I'm not convinced of, I'm not convinced of Trump's nomination either, but if Bernie gets it on the Democrat side, Rick, we're literally going to have an election where the country is choosing between communism and capitalism.
See, I'd have to modify that a little bit because I don't really think of Trump as a true capitalist. And again, this is just, I know, this is just me being the anti-Trump guy. I think he's kind of morphed into more of a crony capitalist. And I think, honestly, that may be the election we're about to look at, is do we want a socialist in the White House or do we want a crony capitalist in the White House? And honestly, at this point, and this is just me again telling you what I think, whether it's Hillary versus Trump or Bernie versus Trump, no matter who wins, I honestly kind of think we all lose. And that's only because I'm terrified of what Trump is going to do when facing access to the power that he will have as the leader of the free world. Only again because you can see how he treats people now. The only indicator of future behavior, best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. You can see how he treats people now. If he has access to basically unfettered, unbridled power, now that Obama has made the world understand that no president really has to use Congress till we change something, then no matter who wins at this point, I think we could be in a lot of trouble, especially if it comes down to between one of those three. But that's just me.
Yeah, no, he doesn't just scare me as much as those two, that's for sure. And whoever we get in there, to a degree, especially someone that has been heavily backed by super PACs and has been lobbied too heavily just to get into the position that they're into now to run for office, is already a crony capitalist, Rick. There's no way of getting around that. So I think the one that might be a crony capitalist to a lesser degree, again, not an optimum choice. We don't have perfect choices here. Again, this isn't the time. Maybe it is the time for it, but we don't have the option of just purity in the ideal 100% candidate. So if I'm voting for the lesser of two evils and hoping for a good manager and CEO and someone who'll have American interests at heart, I'll take Trump. And I think you will be surprised by the modification in his behavior. I think he looks at the primaries and politics as a street fight. I think he thinks he's up against a bunch of lying politicians, and he's going to do what he can to take them out early as he can when they attack him, so he doesn't have to put so much work, time, or money into them, and keep getting what he says is his message out there, while everybody else is spending all their time raising money from the crony capitalists that you're worried about.
All right, folks, we are officially out of time. Patrick, it has been my pleasure having you here today. Folks, if you are interested in keeping up with Patrick, you can follow him on Twitter at Fornari Sense. You can also check out his book on Amazon. We'll be back with you next week, folks. Thanks, WNJC. We'll be back next Thursday.
Don't